Hi, this is Kimmy, and I wanted to take a second and share my story. How I have hands now that have limited mobility and weakness, and some other physical challenges and pain. Overall, I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. 9 years ago, I woke up and I was a first grade teacher, photographer, busy bee, had lots to do, lots of energy. And a Saturday around maybe 10 a.m., I remember getting ready after my shower and my back felt like a Charlie horse, but in my back. And it got so intense, I asked to go to the emergency room, which is not like me. And I remember when I asked to go to the emergency room, walking to the car I was pretty weak. It was hard. And so get to the car, go to the emergency room, and they do tests. All I can do is tell them I have so much pain, it hurts, and they give me a ton of morphine. At that time, I remember one thing in particular that stood out that was alarming, and that was going to the bathroom. And for girls, we don't have to push. So I remember trying to go to the restroom, and I couldn't. And now I know, looking back, I've learned since then, part of a nerve damage, you have trouble going to the restroom. So that was it was still daytime. Come home, lay down. I had so much morphine, I just crashed and fell asleep. I slept so long and hard that when I woke up, it was nighttime, like middle of the night. And at this point, I remember lifting up my arm, and I just was so weak. I almost hit myself in the face. And I had the wherewithal to think, okay, logistics, I can't walk to the car, so get a dolly, get the cushions from the couch. I need to be pushed. I didn't want to call an ambulance. And this time when I got to the emergency room, my fingers couldn't bend at all. And they were just flat as a board. Now they're curved, but they were flat as a board. And they had me go to get a CT scan and MRI. And I also remember when the guy said, can you get up and hop on the table to go through the MRI machine? I couldn't. My brain could, I thought, but I physically couldn't. That was a little alarming. And this time, when I got test results, I'm still in the emergency room for my second time, same day. They saw something small in my spine. And that was enough for them to have the house doctor called. So the house doctor comes, asks you a bunch of questions. And, one of the questions that I don't really care for, but I know it's part of their job is, how are things at home? Are you okay? Blink twice if there's a problem. And I didn't like that. I had a great life. I was happy and everything was great. So that's a personal note, but I got admitted to the hospital, and at this moment it was now daytime, and I remember saying, I still can't urinate. And sure enough, they did a little ultrasound on my bladder, gave me a catheter, and before I knew it, the house neurologist comes in, looking at all the tests that they had run while I was in the emergency room. And by this time, I had an IV in my hand, and the nurse says, okay, the neurologist wants to do a spinal tap. Of course, I don't realize how serious a spinal tap is and how much it's supposed to hurt. I lay on my side in the fetal position, and I remember the nurse holding my legs and my neck to keep me still. And she just had a stoic look on her face. It wasn't alarming. It wasn't trying to, everything's fine. But it was enough for me to pause inside. So I lay still and the neurologist does the spinal tap, and I don't feel anything. Nothing. I don't feel the needle. I don't feel that pain that usually happens. And, the nurse says, okay, you're done. And I was like, oh, that was easy. That IV hurt more than that, And then the eyes of concern is what I saw in her face. So the neurologist, who's very serious and, urgently trying to figure out what's wrong, thinking maybe it's Lyme disease, maybe there's a tick in her hair, maybe it's Guillain-Barré, maybe it's MS, all of those autoimmune deficiencies or diseases. And so I get my spinal tap, and then as protocol, the house physical therapists come walking in, and mind you, I'm 6 feet tall, and at the time probably weighed 225 pounds, and this, I think maybe 5 foot tall physical therapist comes in. There's 2 of them, but I'll never forget her with her patent leather waist belt, those elastic things they put on your waist. And the idea was, get up, get out of bed. We want you to get walking. They do that after surgery even now. And I look at her and I'm thinking, I can't even move my hands, and you want me to try to get up, and you're going to catch me? So fortunately, the neurologist was like, not today, keep it moving, So I remember being on the 5th floor, and the nurses were very, very, very serious and professional, and it just had a feeling of like they were the boss of the nurses, if that makes sense. So as all the different specialists come in, and I'm a little oblivious. I'm sort of that person that says, everything will be fine, be positive, and my family is concerned and they're nervous, but they're not telling me why they're nervous. And I'm thinking they're going to flip a switch or find a pill or give me a shot, surgery. I'll be walking out of here in no time. That was my frame of mind, which was probably good. And sitting on the 5th floor was when, after they were done, after probably a couple days, they were doing all those tests I had mentioned, and finally got steroids going. And they discovered in my spine, the inside of my spinal cord, or my spinal cord casing, had an inflammation, and that was pushing on my nerves and shutting off the blood supply. So that was where the paralysis was coming, and I can't walk, I can't move my hands. And once the steroids started, that stopped the inflammation. But so much damage had been done by that time. Again, I didn't know. And I was able to work with some of the physical therapists to learn how to walk again, and learn how to hold a cup, and do the little simple things. Still couldn't use the bathroom, and the nurses had to help me, which is very humbling to have a nurse wipe you. One moment I'll never forget in this timeline is walking with the walker. It was tricky because I had no movement in my hands, so I couldn't hold on to the walker. And I was able to walk down the hallway at one point, and I turned around and I'm walking back slowly, and I just see my family going, and I remember thinking, of course I'm going to walk again. Duh. But to see the look on their face of still scared but celebrating kind of made me realize how serious it was, what I was going through. And I think by this time they had diagnosed with the word transverse myelitis, which is kind of an umbrella term for an autoimmune disease, and it manifests different in everybody. And so at one point I got moved to, I think it was the 3rd floor or the 2nd floor. Some things I think I might have blocked out on purpose. And still I had my happy, go lucky attitude. And I remember I was able to really get walking by this time. And, then I get moved to the 1st floor. And the 1st floor was where all the stroke where the stroke patients were recovering. Or maybe I had a roommate that had back surgery, and a senior citizen was my roommate one time. I had 5 roommates at one time, and wow, having somebody's commode right next to you on the other side of a curtain that they're using, you just suck it up. And I was really fortunate to have a lot of visitors come and say hi. And I spent a lot of time in the lobby listening to the piano playing, or the pianist. And there were these 2 doctors. Out of all the specialists, out of all the doctors that came, these 2 doctors, I almost wonder if I imagined them. And they walked up to me. And by this time, I had understood I had nerve damage, and my nerves were having to grow back, and they caught it in time to where it didn't affect my legs. So that's me learning how to walk again. And, 9 years later, I'm, still struggling with my hands, having paralysis and weakness. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and these 2 doctors walk up, and they say to me, I can't even remember their title. In my imagination, they were like the head of neurology or something like that. But they said 2 things that I'll never forget. They said, 1, don't underestimate how powerful your brain is. And by that meaning, be positive, and also visualizing my nerves growing back. And then the other was understanding how slowly your nerves growing back will take. It's not going to be an overnight thing. So I kept those 2 things in my pocket, every single day for the last 9 years. And I choose to say, I can't do that yet. Or, my hands aren't bending yet, or along those positive lines. And so they came to visit me twice, and one time, the first time they told me that. I'll never forget those 2 doctors. So after a month in the hospital, I go home, and at this time I can walk, I can sit up, I can move my head. I just had severe weakness in my hands. So I had to get busy thinking about logistics of getting dressed. Right before I got discharged from the hospital, there was also another person I'll never forget, and he was the occupational therapist. And he and the other occupational therapist would come to my room, my curtain room, and, put my tennis shoes on for me and work on the fine motor skills. And I had said, I refuse to leave here and have someone wipe my butt. And so I watched him think out loud. And I think that has a huge impact on me giving my all and being determined to try 1,000 different ways. Being a teacher, you think that way too. And so when I made that comment about going to the bathroom and be independently wiping my butt, he took his other hand, and he just looked at it, and he thought about it. And he's thought, well, she can't hold on to toilet paper and do this. And he said, let me think of other cultures. There's some cultures that use one hand to wipe for the bathroom, and the other hand stays clean. And he said, why not put a wipe on the back of your hand, and it stays on your hand, and use that to be independent in the bathroom. And it worked. It was really the first and most valuable independent moment of doing something on the road to recovery. I get home, like I said, and I thought, I can't zip up anything. I can't button things. Half of my clothes I can't wear. I'd lost a ton of weight in the hospital, and I had to just figure out how to put a dress on and my hands through my sleeves. My mom was putting loops on my pants so I could put my hand through a loop and pull my pants up myself. Before I left the hospital, I learned how to put socks on, which I'll put it in a video one day. And so that was the beginning of me going home and my journey of being independent and recovering. And from that day forward, I was not able to teach anymore. And I'm grateful that my last year teaching was the best year. And doing photography, it's tricky with a camera. Glad we have phones with cameras on them now. So that's how it all started. That's the beginning of my story of transverse myelitis. And through these last 9 years, I've been around the world. Not around the world, but I've been to lots of places on this planet to find solutions and try anything and everything. And I'll share that in another video. So this was my really personal, vulnerable story of how I'm determined to continue to use my brain to not give up and to keep believing that my nerves are still growing. Your hands and your arms and your body have a lot of little nerves in them. And I believe that my nerves are like roadways. They just have a blockage, a traffic jam, a closed road maybe, and my nerves are having to find a new route and find a new way to get down to my fingers to bend. And the best thing I can do is continue to stay positive, to continue to try and fail and try and fail and try and usually succeed in my own way. And I'm really proud of that. Thanks for listening and letting me share something that's close to my heart and is such a powerful piece of me. Stay determined. Until next time.